everyone, it's Michelle Upton here, and I am taking part in a blog hop that is a collaboration between Picket Fence Studios and My Sweet Petunia, which is very exciting. Now, I've already made this card, the surprise "This is for you" card, using this Bot and Peony stamp from Picket Fence, but I decided I wanted to make a video, so I also decided to make the card again, but with a different colour scheme this time. So I'm starting with some watercolour cardstock. This is Canson Montval watercolour cardstock, watercolour paper. And I'm adding some Hero Arts shadow inks in various different colours. Started with this sort of vanilla colour because I wanted a different colour scheme to the first card. So I'm going with pinks and purples as opposed to the reds and oranges and yellows in the last card. But even though when I pulled out the three different colours, this pink and the sort of more hot pink colour and then the very dark purple, they all looked to be very cool colours. Even the pinks were sort of on the cool edge of pink. They didn't have very much yellow in it. So I thought I'd start off with a base of the sort of yellowy vanilla colour just to add a little bit more warmth in the background there. So my aim for the background is just to get some splotchy colour. I don't want it to blend very nicely. I don't want it to sort of have a nice even sort of watercolour wash look. I want it to be splotchy because I wanted to add a bit of texture. So when I added the yellowy colour, I added with lots of water, but when I added the pinks and the purples, I didn't spray with nearly as much water, so I ended up with the splotchiness of those pinks and purples. Now here I'm getting out my major stamp, a very large peony image, and I'm going to put this into my Misty. Now I have to tell you, because I want some appreciation here, I actually cleaned my Misty before doing this video. I hope you appreciate that. Because yeah, the lid was just a little bit, black and it had some ink on it that I hadn't cleaned off properly, so I got out my proper cleaning materials for the Misty and gave it a good wipe down. Anyway, I've taken a different purple colour of shadow ink here. Now, I'm actually going to be using Copic markers to colour this image, and some of you right now will be screaming, hang on, this ink is not Copic safe. Yes, I know it's not Copic safe, but the point of this stamped image is not to actually provide the outline for the final card. It's just to provide guidelines for me to add some Copic colour. Because at the end of this, I'm actually going to white emboss over this image, which is one of the amazing things about the Misty. When I've finished colouring this, I can put this piece of cardstock back into the Misty and stamp right over where I've already stamped, and it'll be perfect. And the reason I'm doing it this way is that I'm using Copic markers and I want to use embossing, and Copic markers tend not to work incredibly well with embossing. If you do the embossing first and then colour with the Copic markers, you tend to get this sort of residue on the tips of the Copic markers, and that doesn't really worry me that much. Some people it worries and they think it damages their Copic markers, but I've never found that the Copic markers work any differently after getting that residue on them. But depending on what colour you use, the Copic markers can actually stain the white embossing. And that's the main reason why I'm doing it this way, because I plan on using some sort of hot pink colours, and they're notorious for staining embossing powder because I've done it before and just, didn't look very good at all. So I've decided to go this way. Now you'll see that this colouring is not the usual for Copic colouring. Copic colouring is usually all about getting a beautiful blend and all of that, but I'm not trying to blend these at all because I'm working on watercolour paper and it's not really designed to blend Copic markers very well at all. So that wasn't my aim. My aim is to get some bold colour down and just to use the stamped image as a guide. Here's the colours that I've used. So if you're interested in the colours that I've used, have a look now. And then I'm going to stamp right on top of it again and get the white embossing over the top. So you saw a couple of times while I was doing the colouring, I actually took the plastic sheet that the stamp comes on and laid it over the top just to make sure that what I was actually seeing through that plastic was what I wanted to see if I needed to add a bit more colour. And I was happy with what I saw, so now I'm going on to the embossing part. So I've put my image back into the Misty. By the way, the reason it's upside down in the Misty is just because it's hanging off the edge of the cardstock on two sides, and I wanted it to go into the Misty into the corner so I could get perfect placement again. And I just prefer to use my Misty with the door on the right-hand side. I could have done it the other way around and had it in the top corner, but had the door on the left-hand side. But yeah, that's just not the way I prefer to use the Misty. So you could do it whichever way you like, really. It doesn't really matter. All right, so I'm using my favourite white embossing powder, which is Hero Art's white embossing powder. And you can see I don't really have that much left. I'm going to have to top up my stock of white embossing powder pretty soon because, yeah, it's running pretty low. Now I'm also stamping over this twice. So I applied the embossing powder, heat it up to melt it, and now I'm stamping again in Versamark to add another layer of white embossing powder because I wanted that embossing to be quite thick. I actually debated whether I should add a third layer, but I decided against it. I'm not entirely sure why I decided against it because, yeah, it would have looked really good with 3 as well. But anyway, I stopped at 2 for this particular card. All right, so that's the base layer done. But now I have to put this panel onto, or actually have to heat it up first. I forgot about that. Have to heat up the embossing powder, get it set, and then I have to put it onto a card base. And I decided to do the same as what I'd done with the original card, the orangey red one, and have a little white border around the edge of it so that the card base, the white card base, showed through on the edges. So I'm just trimming it down just a tiny little bit, and I'll adhere that to my white card base. This is Nina Solar White, and I've got a top folding card base and just using my tape runner. This is Kikuyo tape runner that I always use. And yeah, now I decided I wanted pretty much the same look as my first card, but I decided to go with a different sentiment. So I'm using a sentiment from this Early Tulip Bouquet stamp set from Picket Fence, and I'm going to white emboss that onto a piece of, this is Hero Art's black cardstock, which is really nice and dark black cardstock. It's really, really cool. And after stamping that with Versamark, I again added some white embossing powder so that I could have that sort of theme of the white embossing powder going across the entire card. And then I decided to cut it down. On the first card, I just cut it down as a rectangle. But with this one, because the descender on the Y in the word lovely sort of stuck out is a bit unusual, I decided to cut around that. It's one of my favourite things to do with sentiments, is to just cut around the ascenders and descenders and the letters just to make it look a little bit different. All right, so that's pretty much the card. I'm going to pop this up on some dimensional adhesive, adhere it to the card, and I'm done. So make sure you go and visit my blog. So all the information will be on my blog, but this is also a blog hop. So make sure you go and visit all of the other hoppers on the hop. There are prizes to be won, so make sure you get involved. Thanks very much for visiting today. Bye.